Father in heaven, thank you for blessing us with opportunities and life. And as we consider the things here, allow us to be alert and also learn. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I think this is my favorite class. To me. Yeah, this is my favorite class because this is a new field, and it is growing leaps and bounds, and what we're learning out of it is just so impressive that it's cool to dig in and find new treasures, and this is a treasure. Okay, it's called the second brain. I used to call it kefir, but change it to second brain because it's what it means. It's another do-it-yourself to restore your enteric system's health. And basically your digestive system contains the same amount of nerve endings as your central nervous system. And it's so amazing that the digestive system, it is called the second brain because it is actually, there's a lot of functions that impact the way you feel, the way you do things that is related to the gut. If you look at this picture, you can see all the nerve endings that surround your whole digestive system. Like, for example, if you eat something, let's say a piece of bread, and you start chewing that piece of bread, and all of a sudden you get a bad news, some really bad news. That thing won't go anywhere. It just gets stuck in there and it just can't get down. So the muscle movement and everything that it moves is depending on your nervous system, or it's called the enteric system, but it's called a second brain because it kind of has a brain of its own. It is not dependent on the brain in order to function. For example, you could have somebody that its brain, the brain is not working, and they can still feed them and continue to have digestive process, and everything would move. Now there's a relationship between the brain and the gut. These two have a very close relationship. You have heard of butterflies. I have butterflies in my... When you get nervous, if you got to go present in front of someone or in some of a big group, you might get these butterflies. I do every time I have to go in front of church or something that I have to prepare. I mean, it cleans me up. It's like a cleanse for me. I go to the bathroom many times before I get up there. And I'm used to doing this, but I don't know, it just always happens. Now, this is some interesting notes, is that 90% of the serotonin that you produce is produced right here. So 90% of the serotonin levels serotonin is produced right here in the gut. 90%. Now, serotonin is a neurotransmitter that makes you chill, relax, just if you have anxiety problems, most likely you have low serotonin levels. Like some things like marijuana, what they do is the problem with them is that when you use marijuana, even though they say medical and whatnot, when you use it, it increases the threshold of serotonin. So if you feel good, and I wasn't going to write, Glenn, but I'm going to write on the board. If your normal levels and feeling good, let's say your normal levels, of serotonin in your body is this, what marijuana does, it increases it. You get a high, right? And the high gets up here. So the people that use that they feel really relaxed, really chill, everything is good and dandy, right? But the problem is that when everything is normal, they're not smoking marijuana or using marijuana, maybe the serotonin levels go to normal, but it's such a drop for them that they don't feel good. They feel like something is missing in their lives. And that's why they need that, go back again to that high, because what it does, it raises those levels of serotonin, and the person is never good. Now, person with anxiety might be here, but them going here, it's already anxiety. They have anxiety. They don't feel good. No more. Now, it is a problem when the gut produces 90% of it, and the person have problems of anxiety. Maybe we should look where the source of your neurotransmitters that work, to make you feel good, it's produced. So it's produced right here, and if you're not producing, you're going to have anxiety. Okay. Another thing is dopamine. Your 50% of the dopamine, 50%, half of the dopamine that you produce it right here in the gut also. So you see, feeling good and making sure that you can do the things you need to do is not only depending on your self-motivation, it's also on these chemicals, and these chemicals are produced by your body in this area, or the majority of them in this area. So this is an important system that we need to take care of and figure out how it works and how we can improve the functioning of it. Dopamine, basically what it does, is a chemical that allows you to achieve things, to motivate you to go and do things. People that suffer from depression, typically they don't want to do anything. You just want to sit down or lay down in bed, really not motivated to do anything, And typically it's low dopamine levels. That's why the chemicals that they give them in the doctor is to most likely to raise those things, at least gives them that motivation to continue. The same thing with the alkaloids like cocaine, nicotine, caffeine. All those alkaloids have the response also of raising the dopamine levels. Pornography, video games, they have that they raise these dopamine levels too high. When you don't have it, just if you lose a little bit of it and you don't have it, you feel something is missing. So this is artificially done, and it kind of messes you up later on, because your body cannot sustain that unless it's externally provided. Now, most importantly, 80% of your immune system, it's found right here. Now, I said 90% of serotonin, 50% of dopamine, but 80% of your immune system, it is right here. It makes sense. Makes total sense, because this is the portal to the blood. This is the portal to the body, right? This is an isolated system where it comes in through your mouth and it goes out to your anus and it doesn't touch anything, right? It's isolated, it's containing that in the digestive system. But it does have some contact with the blood through a process that we're going to look into in a minute here. But is there containing anything? And you could put anything in your mouth. You could kill yourself by putting things in your mouth. And that's why you have so much immunity right here. Because if something comes to the blood, the immune system is right there to defend the body. Okay? And that is the purpose of it. It's just to defend it. So that's why 80% of it is found right here. So when you're looking at problems, mental illnesses, mental issues, you should not only look at the brain as it impacts, but you should look at the gut as a source of a lot of the depression problems that we face, or lack of motivation. You know, I see that there's a lot of young people, lots of young people. You know, they go to high school, and after high school, they go on marijuana, and they lose motivation to do anything. No job, no desire for anything in life, and it's a majority. It's a majority. I mean, it's incredible what's going on, and I believe that the lifestyle that destroys this is causing them to kind of be dependent on these drugs because they don't feel well. They're not producing these things, and it's a big problem. Anyways, this is a new field, as I say. People are starting to understand that, you know, how your second brain goes also goes your mood and well-being. So if I want to get, you know, have different perspective in life, sometimes you gotta fix this. I don't know if you have you know, tutor or talk to someone. Some people have given Bible studies and stuff, and just people really, you sit down with them and they don't really understand. They have like a mental fog. They can't penetrate deeper than a certain level. And once they clear this area and fixes the second brain, their mood change and they're more alert to listen to what you have to say. Now, one of the important things of this part is that you have an ecosystem of bacteria. Your body has so much bacteria that for every cell, and you have from 60 to 100 trillion cells, you have 10 bacteria. So you are more bacteria than person. Your DNA is more bacteria than person. You have bacteria in your mouth, in your nose. It's an ecosystem that controls the way you do. For example, there's a study I was reading earlier. They did this study on a big group of women, and they decided to check their gut and check the bacteria that they had, the colonies of bacteria they had. And they found that there was a minority group that were deficient of a specific bacteria. I don't remember the name of that bacteria, but one specific bacteria, they were this small group of the hundreds of women that did this research, were missing this bacteria. And when they put them in these brain scanners, and they could see their brain, how brain works and how it reacted to different imagery or circumstances and situations. So they started passing these images, and they were not very happy images. And the women that were missing this bacteria reacted differently than the women that had that bacteria in their gut. And the way they reacted was either really sad, maybe depressed about the imagery that they were seeing, compared to the other that were able to overcome. And maybe they felt sad, but they were able to overcome. And they saw all these brain patterns that were happening just because of this group, small group, that they had a lack of this specific bacteria. So this bacteria, they didn't conclude anything yet. It's still in research, but they said, you know, it is interesting to dig in and to see how this bacteria affects the way you see life. And now it's a fact that the way you like to eat is dependent on the bacteria you have. So if you go to a place, a region, and you test the guts of people, you're going to see that they have similar bacteria patterns. So I could go to a region in India, and people like this type of food or that type of food, and most likely everybody else likes that type of food. It feeds a certain type of bacteria, and everybody has the same colony of bacteria. They have different, similar patterns that you see in these populations. And the same happens in animals too. You could see that their gut bacteria is depending on the area where they live. They also did this study with rats, where these rats were, there were one group that had a gene problem, where they would be overweight, and they were predisposed to diabetes. And these other group of rats, they didn't have that problem. They were skinny, and they didn't have that problem. Well, they decided to exchange the gut bacteria from the one that was fat and was predisposed to diabetes. They put it on the other group, and their offsprings that inherited or got their bacteria started becoming fat and diabetic too. It's amazing. So there's huge studies on this, how the bacteria in gut determines your cravings and the way you eat and the way you gain weight or not gain weight. So it's a big research study. I mean, there's big research studies going on this. And for example, there was a research in Boston in some areas where people have different inflammations in their gut, and now they're exchanging fecal matter from a healthy person and they see a lot of benefits in some cases. So the bacteria in your gut is very, very important. Very important to determine how you live your life, and even how you feel and think about things. No wonder you have 10 to 1, so it is very important. For example, I'll just give you an example in our body. If I ask you, give me an item, a food item with vitamin A, which one will you say? Carrots, that's very common. And any other one has? Kale, yes, kale. Anything else? Sprouts, yeah. To tell you the truth, none of those have vitamin A. They have something called beta carotene. Now, when the beta carotene gets to your gut, the bacteria in your gut eats the beta carotene and poops vitamin A, which you need. And there's many bacteria like that. B12 is a vitamin that is produced by the poop of bacteria. And there's many other B complexes that is the same way. So basically, you don't find it in the food per se. They produce the raw material for the bacteria to eat and then poop. And most of these bacteria that colonizes your body, and especially your gut, it is dependent on fiber, heavy fiber. And sometimes we don't have heavy fiber meals. So since we don't have heavy fiber, we have all these problems of imbalances in our gut just because there's not enough fiber for all these bacteria to eat. So we have these very small, simple fibers that we eat, and the bacteria cannot feed on that simple fibers. We eat a lot of breads, a lot of pasta, a lot of these things sometimes are deficient of these fiber, heavy fiber, unless you buy the whole grains and those. But the majority of them are just lacking these fiber, so the bacteria gets starved out, and then you have a lot of other problems. Okay, now you have the epithelial cells, which are the cells in your intestinal tract and your digestive system. So you have these cells, and what they do is that when they produce a mucus layer, and this mucus layer that they produce is where the bacteria lives, and the bacteria eats the fiber, and it poops something called butyrate. It is some fuel or medium chain fatty acids. If you look at it now, it's a craze of MCT or eat coconut oil or things like that, or ghee or stuff like that, because it is producing these ketogenic diet. That's what they're thinking, that you're producing these things. You're giving the body these fuel. Now, the problem with this is that God didn't design you to start eating coconut oil, because really, I mean, there's a processing plant that in order to get this oil, you just eat the coconut with the fiber. If you eat enough fiber, you don't have to have that problem of having to use, ghee or coconut oil or any of that stuff. Your own bacteria would eat the fiber, would produce the butyrate, and it would feed the epithelial cells that would produce more mucus, more of this mucus layer. Okay, so that's a pattern. Even it is now understood, and it's just at this beginning, that one of the major problems with heart disease, it is because of this process here, and I'm going to explain why in more detail. So we could probably write it in the board so you can understand what's going on. No, so then after this epithelial cell, you have the blood, and here is where food comes into your body, and it should be already digested here when it comes here. Okay, you cannot have any undigested food in your blood, because the blood does not have a digestive system to break down these things. It doesn't have the enzymes to break down the food that you eat. Okay, so we eat whole foods. The body, digestive system, break them down into really small blocks, and then once it's broken down in small blocks, they go through these little walls here into the blood. Okay, and these walls are there to avoid undigested food to come into the blood, because the blood would not know what to do with undigested food. Okay, so in here, not only you have regular blood cells, but you have a lot of the immune cells are right here, because they're in alert mode trying to see what is coming through that it should not be coming through. Okay? Now, in people that do not eat fiber, a very heavy fiber diet, then these cells will not be able to produce this mucus layer. So now you're going to have some deterioration here. And many other reasons there's deterioration, but I'm just looking at fiber at this moment. And it would open up, these walls would open up, and now food that is undigested and the same bacteria that was supposed to be there is going to get to the blood. Okay? So that is a big problem. And I'm gonna show you about I'm going to draw the what I just said about heart diseases, so you can probably get an idea what I'm saying here. So you have your epithelial cells, right? Just put like this so it knows it's a cell. And they produce a mucus lining. They produce this mucus lining as long as you get and then there's the blood here. As long as there is fiber, they produce this mucus lining. And in this part here, you have bacteria. You have bacteria right here that it has a job to convert beta-carotene into vitamin A, or eat some of the carbohydrates you eat or whatnot. You have these bacteria here. Okay? Now, there is in different circumstances that, and we'll look into why it happens, but there's circumstances that this wall here gets open. Now, here you're going to have an undigested food particle. So you're going to have an undigested food particle that now it's coming down to the blood. Another thing that happens is that bacteria, now, it's also exposed to this area. And you have your immune system right here. And the immune system sees bacteria. What do you think it's going to do when it sees bacteria? Attack, right? It's going to attack. It's going to attack, and it's going to send chemical signals all over the place. All over the place. It's going to send chemical signals all over the place. Well, you have something called LDL cholesterol, which is not cholesterol, it's just a boss. So you have HDL and you have LDL. Okay? Now, imagine that LDL is like a school bus. And this one, it's like what's your car, Daisy? Yeah, what's the brand? What? Sonic. A Sonic. So HDL is a Sonic. Anybody seen Daisy's car? No. It's a cute little red car that it's there. Very practical for the city. I'm glad you have a car like that too. And then this is a bus, a school bus, right? Now, they transport cholesterol. Okay, they're in the business of transporting cholesterol. Cholesterol is needed for a lot of functions of the body, especially for cell repair, especially for your hormones to help you build their hormones and all these things, right? So cholesterol is needed to repair other things. So now LDL, it's carrying cholesterol to a place. Now, what can carry more cholesterol? The little Sonic or the bus? Yes, the bus. Well, it's traveling around the blood, and it's going to the liver, right? It's going to the liver, and when it's going to the liver, the way, let's assume, I don't know the structure exactly, and it will be very complex for me to write it, but imagine that the structure of this is like this. Okay? And these legs here that are coming, this is LDL. These legs that he has, it's carrying cholesterol. So this is cholesterol here, cholesterol molecule. That's LDL. Now, there's a problem, right? A bacteria, this is open, a bacteria came in. And if I'm going too technical, just let me know, stop me, because I try not to be technical, especially when you're in cleansing and tired and all that stuff. But sometimes it's interesting to see these things. Okay, so a bacteria comes in, inflammation comes in, inflammatory chemical comes in and says, hey, there's a problem. And an LDL molecule is passing by. What happens is that because there is an inflammatory response, LDL will come out and cholesterol will get released. So now, cholesterol has been released from this LDL molecule. And what's going on it's the chemical to respond to inflammation. A chemical for inflammation. It's taking the Yes, the spot of cholesterol. Now, what's going to happen is that these LDL will not be able to go back to the liver in this state. This state, it cannot go to the liver. So the liver will start producing more and more and more and more. And that's when they go and tell you you have high cholesterol problems. You see? But the inflammation started here. You see, this is a problem of inflammation. There's many ways to skin this cat, but I'm just trying to give you just something pertinent to the class we're having now. Now, when this opens up, these guys are going to see these bacteria, and they're going to try to attack this area here. That's what they're there for. So they're going to try to attack this bacteria here. And things are going to get crazy. There's inflammation all over the place going on. They produce something called cytokines. And these cytokines are chemicals for responsive inflammation. It is like saying, you know, it is like a massive text that you send, a broadcast text that it gets everywhere saying, alert, alert. Have you seen those texts when there is like, they kidnap someone, a child, and it says red alert or brown alert or orange alert, and everybody gets it in their cell phone. Or at least I get it and my wife gets it. Amber alert. Yeah, amber alert or whatever. So a broadcast. So every time there's inflammation here, where 80% of your immune system is, you're going to get an inflammation broadcast. Now, when you hear these things, they don't sound like a little beep and gone. They sound like trrr, trrr, and the phone vibrates, and it's like, wow, it alerts you like, whoa, what's going on? Something major is happening. Well, imagine that this is happening, and every time you eat something, this is causing a problem. And you get an inflammation, like brr, brr, an alert, crazy chemicals all over the place. Well, that happens many times. This is how I see it in the blood. I see it called dysbiosis, or now the new term is leaky gut, where I see a platelet and I see the sign of inflammation. Now, these cells here, they are bound together. They have these like a zipper-like. Imagine like a zipper-like. They have these proteins here that bind them together, and they're very strong, bound together, and nothing is going to break them. And it is good because only digested particles can go through. Okay? But sometimes there's some enzymes, and these enzymes, what do enzymes do? They are knives, so they cut through these proteins. They have a specific knife for every single nutrient. For example, for carbohydrates, you have some type of enzymes or knives, amylase. For proteins, you have a certain specific knife. And even for different proteins, you have very specific knives. For example, somebody that knows how to cook or is chef, they don't use the same knife for everything. They have a knife for bread, a knife for meat, a knife for butter. It's not the same knife for everything. And you just can't do the job. So there's a different enzyme that can break these things. Okay? And that's why you have this opening things that it opens up. Okay? Now, things can get stretched a little bit. These things can stretch. Look at the proteins. They're called occludins or cloudins, but it doesn't matter. These things stretch a little bit, and sometimes they let things go through. Okay? Things permeate through because they stretch, and we'll see what things happen. Let me show you. There's two conditions here that I'm talking about. I'm talking about some permeability in your gut, and I'm talking about a disruption of the bacteria, the number of bacteria you have in your gut. Okay? Two things. What things causes that these chains open up. Let's look what happens. When you eat gluten, any type of gluten, you produce an enzyme called sonulin. Doesn't matter if it's all gluten, new gluten. Gluten produces this issue. It opens up these walls, okay, for a period of time. That's why people are like, it causes inflammation. It does cause inflammation. You cannot skin it any other way, okay? It is tested many ways. Gluten is going to cause this inflammation. Now, a normal functioning body that doesn't have celiac disease, after a period of time, it will go back together, okay? So, sonulin causes this to open like this, but a normal functioning body will cause it to be put back together, okay? If you don't have a problem with gluten intolerant, you'll be fine. Now, it's a period of time when this is open that there's going to be an inflammatory response in your body, okay? Even though you're healthy, you're going to have an inflammatory response on the body. But most likely, when you eat a lot of gluten very frequently, then you're going to have this issue happening quite frequently. Casein A1 milk. So milk. Casein is the protein of the milk. Casein is the protein of the milk. And the protein of the milk, for the cows that are grown here in this hemisphere and in Europe, they produce this structure of protein called casein A1. You could research. There's a lot of information on casein A1. Now, this milk are basically cows that produce milk. The cows that produce milk produce this type of protein. This protein causes the body to produce an enzyme called interleukin-4. This interleukin-4 causes this problem where it just breaks these walls too, break these chains of proteins. It breaks them apart. Now, the cows that are in India and in Africa produce a protein called casein A2. They're different types of cows, okay? They're not milk-producing cows, but they produce milk. Obviously, every cow produces milk, but or supposed to produce milk. But it is not for the objective of these cows is not milk production, okay? So, and they produce a different type of milk. Now, Australia and New Zealand are knowing this problem, and they're trying to do something to reintroduce cows that produce casein A1. But let me tell you, here in the United States and Canada and Mexico and Latin America, it's not going to happen pretty soon. I mean, there might be some clients that know this and want to have their cheese and milk, and we're going to try to see if we can commercialize this. But, you know, I saw an interview with one of the ranchers just before, an American rancher, just before Trump got elected. And he said, you know, he was like, you know, I'm just hoping that, you know, Trump puts America first. Here's the problem we're seeing. We're trying to compete with markets with Latin American cows. And what happens is that the ranchers, American ranchers, what they're doing is they're buying Latin American cows that they have no rules, no regulations, so they're full of steroids. And these cows are huge cows. So they sell them to an American rancher. The American rancher puts them to eat grass for a couple of days, and then they go ahead and sell them. And these cows are bigger than American cows because we have some regulations. We cannot compete with these cows. But the issue is that our football player, American football players, you know, they're big, and they're supposed to eat a lot of protein to stay big and whatnot. They're eating all this meat, and they're testing positive as if they're using steroids, but they're really not using steroids. So he was, thinking, Trump is going to close the border on these cows. It's not going to be possible. There's too much money here that it's invested in these steroid cows. And that's just steroids. I'm not talking about the milk. So I doubt that somebody wants to cut the revenue generating cows into cows that don't produce a lot of milk. So this is a problem. This is a problem, big problem. I used to use milk for kefir because it's more nutritious, it's much better, but I stopped doing it. And one of the reasons was it was this part here. I mean, the kefir eats the sugar of the milk, which is problematic too. The galactose, first, we don't produce any rennin after 2 years old, except unless you're from Netherlands. But if we don't produce rennin, so we cannot digest the lactose. Nobody can digest lactose in this after 2 years old. And galactose, what it causes is just causes a problem in your reproductive system, and that's why you have a lot of infertility because of the galactose. This is all documented. Peter has a lot of information on that. You could probably share that information. So the kefir eats the sugar, which take away that problem. But the problem is the casein A1 that causes this problem. Now, I'm just gonna, before I continue, I'm gonna discuss why this is a huge problem. So you have the brain here, and the brain there's a blood-brain barrier. There's a barrier between your blood and your brain, because the brain, I said it was the most important organ that we have. So your brain, can't draw, but imagine this is the brain. It's isolated, you could say a little bit isolated from the body, but it has its own immune system. Now it has an immune system just for the brain, to protect the brain. Okay? So now, when there's been a compromise here, an alert signal gets sent to the body. Alert, alert, we've been compromised. The gut now it's open, things are going to flow into the blood. As soon as they get into the blood, cytokines are going to get out, and the brain is going to know about this problem. And the brain is alert. Okay, if we've been penetrated and compromised our wall of protection, the brain is going to do, okay, let's get busy and also release chemicals for inflammation. Remember, inflammation is to bring more immunity, more nutrients to protect you, right? So it's going to create these problems here. Or actually, not these problems, these alert things. And your body is designed this way because that's how it should work. The problem is that, imagine that every time you eat something that has casein A1 or something that has gluten in it, you produce this response very frequently, very frequently, very frequently. It's going to get to a point that there's so much inflammation here that it's going to be called chronic inflammation, and your brain is going to be the one taking the hit. Eventually, parts of the brain are going to stop their normal functioning. And when that happens, the person has depression. And it is being proven today that inflammation is not a chemical imbalance, because they give these pills to the people with depression, and all of a sudden they stop working, and they give them another one and stop working. It's not just those chemicals. These chemicals are not doing the job. What it is It is an inflammatory, a chronic inflammatory response of the brain. So you want to heal depression, you have to heal this problem. You have to. There's no other option. Okay? Now, oils. Oils have a problem because they produce something prostaglandin. Prostaglandin also causes that problem of opening up. So I said you have these little proteins. Prostaglandin also causes the opening of these things. Now, who doesn't use oils? Everything has oils. You buy any box in the supermarket and it has safflower oil, canola oil, oil. Every processed food has oil. And we cook with oils. So every time you use these oils, you're going to cause a problem here. You're going to produce this enzyme. This is aromatic. This is chemistry, how the chemistry happens. Fructose does the same thing. After 25 grams of fructose, you're going to have that same problem. The body cannot, the gut, which is what metabolizes these fructose to put it into the blood, it just can't handle it. It causes these problems. So we're talking that if you have a processed food meal, you're going to end up in depression no matter what, or other problems. Now, here, if this is the problem, you're going to see problems with allergies. People with allergies, you're going to see people with autoimmune deficiencies, like, for example, fibromyalgia, lupus, Hashimoto, all these thyroid problems. Why are they having all these problems? Because there's this problem here. So it's an autoimmune response that the immune system is getting bombarded and it cannot handle it anymore. So the breadth of this problem is incredible, and we need to protect it. Glyphosate. Glyphosate. Glyphosate is what they call, it's called Roundup, which is a weed killer, right? Why does it? Nobody eats this, right? I'm not saying people are eating this thing, but it is found in our food sources, and just 60 micrograms of this chemical that it's in our food is going to cause a big problem here. It's going to destroy the bacteria that it's here, and it's going to cause this problem too. This is glyphosate. Now, let me show you what it has been studied today. And glyphosate contamination in organic ingredients. This is organic ingredients. I'm not even considering non-organic stuff. Look at organic grains. I'm talking wheat, barley, oats, organic. They have 30 to 60 micrograms per kilogram. Okay? This is just organic grains. Organic lentils. Okay, I said 60 micrograms. This is 3.75 milligrams of glyphosate. Organic lentils. The lentils we eat here for breakfast. Organic lentils. They have 3.75 milligrams of glyphosate. Let's create the math. Anybody is good in math here? 60 micrograms is the problem, right? 3.75 milligrams, it is equal to 3,750 micrograms. This is just organic lentils, and 60 causes a problem. Do you see where we're heading? Organic flaxseed, the one we have here is organic flaxseed. 60 micrograms per kilogram of glyphosate. It's causing problems in the gut. Non-GMO soybeans, meaning not genetically modified, no pesticides, they go from 3.3 to 5.75 milligrams of glyphosate. Conventional soybeans, forget it. It doesn't even register. It's just so bad. Organic beer, it just doesn't even register either. Well, that's a big problem. Because most of our diet is based on these grains, on legumes and grains. Even we're saying, oh, it's organic. It is a cost that, you know, it's a problem. How does the glyphosate get on them? That's a great question. A great question. So I started talking to farmers about it, and I have investigated this. And even the person that did this study, that's the same question he's asking. And no, it's just the browning process. It's called the browning process. You know, if I'm a farmer and I'm producing my grains, the fruit matures at a different rate many times. So what they do, they pick up this fruit, which it could be wheat or it could be oats, it could be whatever. They pick it up and then they put it in a mill and then they dry it up. They dry this mill, they dry it up, and then after that they pick it up and put it on trucks to where they need to go. But now it is being accepted that it's a practice that it's allowed and it still qualifies as organic, where the person grows his food as organic, but at the end, when you kill a plant, the plant produces all the seeds or all the produce that it can. So it's like you kill me, and before I die, I'm just going to produce as much as I can. Okay? So if it had two grains, let's say two little grains, it would produce 7 as fast as it can, and then dies. Okay? So knowing that, if I'm a farmer, I say, and I'm allowed to use glyphosate to kill these plants, all these plants at the same time, I will have a bigger yield, and not only that, they would dry in the plant immediately, all at the same time. So I don't have to use a mill to dry them up. So now I just pick it up and put it on the truck. It makes sense. If I'm allowed to do it, I will do it, no matter if I'm organic or not organic. Now, we put a lot of stock on people saying, yeah, it's organic, but you have to go to these farms and you have to see what's going on before you say it's organic and it's okay. You cannot trust the word of man, because I'm telling you, there is no body that is enforcing anything in these places. And Peter says it right. I mean, and I didn't think of it, but now that I know organic farmers, real organic farmers, and I have dealt with them personally, I understand what he means. You have so much organic food in the markets, in the supermarkets. But when do you see a real organic farm? Where are they? You never see them. Talk to the farmers around you. You never see them. Never know where they're at. They're hiding somewhere underground, somewhere. So anyways, do your own investigation on this. But
who can we trust? We don't buy Quaker oats because we know they're not organic. Who do we trust?
Yeah. So this is a problem that if you think about it, I'm gonna address it differently, okay? You know, this diet, grains and wheats, milks, oils, fructose, it's a very common diet for a very particular group. See, there's no meat here. I'm not even talking about meat, okay? Meat it's not even in the picture because, you know, it's even worse. So there's other bigger problems with meat products, but I'm not including meat. This is just a very particular diet for a group, very vegetarian oriented group. And then on top of that, somebody has sneaked in and had destroyed the sources of good products for this particular group. Look at what 60 micrograms look. This is a 10 cent. It's pretty big. It's actually seen. So this is actually very big. I just say that the option I have, because I need flaxseed, and there's no way I can, you know. So my only source of omega-3s, I have a lot of other sources, but my major source of omega-3, I want to have my lentils, sprouted lentils. I still want to have those. I want to have my grains too. I mean, I want to have these things. So I am attacking the problem in a different way. I think you have to stay ahead of the game. And that is what I am proposing that you should probably use kefir for. You should always try to replenish and reestablish your gut flora and push for eating a healthy fiber-based diet and adding the kefir or some type of probiotic and prebiotic into your diet, because you have to stay ahead of the game. You cannot let yourself, you're eating healthy, and even eating healthy, it's not an option. Or stay on corrected diet, which corrected diet is a lot of fruits and vegetables, hardly any grains and legumes, which you would stay away from that problem in its majority. But if you cannot, then you have to make other alternatives. Now, this is not, I'm saying that, go ahead and eat all the bread and all the, grain products and milk and oils that you can. I'm just saying that, if you stay away from those as much as possible and then enhance your diet with a lot of fiber and some probiotic like kefir, you're probably ahead of the game. So, kefir has a lot of good things, and it's like a big chain of probiotics. I need to go to the demonstration now because it's going to get too late. And I really want to show you how to do the kefir. So that is my answer to your question. What do we do? I said just stay ahead of the game. Do the best thing you could do. Go to a more vegetable-based diet, fruits also, and do something extra. That's kind of what I can think of, unless you have another alternative.
What's your thought on coconut milk kefir? Is it the fat that you don't?
No, if you can do it, that's good. It's just more expensive.
Yeah, true.
But if you can do it, that's good. Yeah, no, that's good. Actually, it's great. Because the kefir, the milk kefir has more bacteria, more strains than just the water kefir. So yeah, but I think you have to. I'm not sure if with coconut milk you have to put it back into milk once in a while and then put it back in. That's not a big deal. It's just it's a more involved process than just what I do with water kefir.
Yeah, I think you do have to put it in.
Yeah, so I was doing milk kefir and it was working fine. I never drink milk in my life. I was raised vegan, so I never, I started having milk products when I was older, cheese, and I couldn't ever drink milk. So when I started doing it here, it was like, my goodness, can I do this? And I didn't have any, effect on it. So I remember when I was in school, elementary school, they push you a glass of milk, and I think I could put quick in it and try to drink it, but I just always try to give it away because it would just upset my stomach. I wasn't used to it. It was leche denia. Yeah. So I didn't cause any problems, but I had a veterinarian for Organic Valley. They do the Organic Valley milk, right? And you can see it. Most of the organic milk that you see in the supermarket is from Organic Valley. So she's a vet, and they're really strict with their processes. But she said, that milk that you're drinking is still 20% grains. And here's what happens to the cows. See, they're milking these cows, and if you give grain to the cows, they're milking them here. If you give grains to the cows, they get diarrhea all the time. So what's going on where they're milking the cow, the diarrhea is coming all the way into the milk, and you're drinking diarrhea in your milk. And I'm like, okay, that just did it for me. We're not going to use that. Forget it. She said, you got to get grass milk in, and I tried to find grass milk at the time, and I couldn't find it. So then I found this about casein A1, and I just called it a day. Stay with water kefir. Kefir made my life simpler, way simpler, because it's more lenient than milk kefir. Kefir, you have to, if you miss a couple hours, already become cheese, and you're like, start over again, get those grains. It's just a mess. So let's go to the kitchen, the other kitchen, and let's show you how to do kefir.